Hello and welcome to another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marshak. My program today is on the deadlift, and the deadlift is a fairly basic strength exercise that I consider to be a fundamental movement that if you're an athlete or even if you're an avid exerciser, you should learn how to do it properly. Not only is it a good exercise to help you in the gym to perform other exercises, makes you stronger all over, but for everyday things that you do in the real world, from picking up a grandchild to grabbing a bag of groceries to lugging heavy buckets of water around your garden. Very functional movements that can be aided by learning how to do a proper barbell deadlift. There are a lot of different, really two main types of deadlifts, a conventional deadlift and a sumo style deadlift. I'm going to talk about both particular styles and the advantages and disadvantages of each particular exercise. And also, if you notice to my right here, how to perform a trap bar deadlift, oftentimes used in high schools. And you find this particular bar at some gyms too, and where it comes into play, who might want to use that particular type of bar for the deadlift. I'll also talk about, my goal today is to talk about ways to strengthen your deadlift or improve your deadlift. You may have some weak areas, say in your hips or your hamstrings, that need to be addressed. And I've got some creative exercises that I like to use with people if they're interested in getting stronger all over. So let's talk about the conventional barbell deadlift first. So I've got a straight Olympic bar, and if you know anything about bars, all Olympic bars weigh exactly 45 pounds. So I've got 135 pounds loaded here on the bar. There are also training weights that you can use if you're not strong enough to pick up 135 pounds. And for learning purposes, this is a training plate. It's a 10-pound training plate, nice and thin. I recommend using a really light weight. If you're in CrossFit or you're participating on CrossFit now or thinking about it, oftentimes during their on-ramp sessions, that's their kind of precursor to getting involved in the actual workouts of the day. They'll have individuals learn how to do basic pulling patterns or deadlift patterns using, say, a dowel rod or a PVC pipe. Light and easy is the best way to go initially when you're learning how to do that. Assuming that you have adequate strength to lift 135 pounds, we're going to start with this today. So a conventional deadlift is really going to be really head-to-toe strength. Not only your grip strength is going to be improved, but your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your upper back, lower back, middle back, shoulders, arms, chest even, everything is being addressed. That's why I really like it as a fundamental movement. A good resource, and I'm going to talk about, again, a variety of different ways to deadlift today, but if you want a good book on the subject matter, there's a book, this is the second edition, called Starting Strength, Basic Barbell Training by Mark Rippeteau and Lon Kilgore. And I think this is one of the better books out there on basic fundamental barbell exercises. But they have a chapter on the deadlift that is incredibly good, and it talks about using straps and using different bars, belting, foot stance, shoulder position, spine angle, hip position, ways to initiate the exercise, but it really goes into complete a lot of depth and detail on how to do it properly. So check out that book, great resource. So back to the conventional deadlift. Some basic things that are important to remember when doing the conventional deadlift is the foot position. I like to think about positioning my feet directly beneath me in a way that if I were going to maximally jump as high as I can, that's where I want my feet aligned. And for most people, it's going to be about hip width or slightly narrower. Some people may feel more comfortable with a slightly narrower foot position when they approach the bar. You have to kind of figure out what feels right for you. But general rule of thumb is figure out where that max jump position would be for your feet, and then position your feet directly beneath the bar. So I like the bar to go over my midfoot. The bar is going to run across the midfoot. Before we get going, I should talk about shoe consideration. I hate running shoes when you're going to do a deadlift or any type of a squat. I think they're stupid. I think they turn off the foot. The foot doesn't do what it should be doing properly. Put your pelvis in a weird anterior pelvic tilt, which is not necessarily good for your back. The flatter the shoe, the better. I've got some old Chuck Taylors that I like to, some Converses that I like to wear. I even like to deadlift oftentimes in my bare feet. I get better foot position or foot drive. I feel that my foot can really make good contact with the ground. Running shoes don't do the trick. Dumb. Don't wear them when you're deadlifting or squatting or lunging. So I'm going to place my feet directly beneath the bar. I'm going to use a double overhand grip. Double overhand grip means one over, both hands over. Not an over-under grip, all right? If you get to the point where you're doing a 1 to 3 rep max, you can use an over-under grip. Otherwise, to develop grip strength, double overhand grip. Also much safer for the bicep tendon. Some people, when they're doing near max loads and they've got an over-under grip, a lot of times you'll hear of people tearing their bicep tendon. So if you want to preserve the integrity of your shoulders, save that bicep tendon, then double overhand grip is best. So I'm going to drive my hips back. I'm going to position my shoulder blades directly over the bar. The bar is going to be over the midfoot. My gaze is going to be about 6 to 8 feet in front of me roughly. But if you look at my spine angle, I'm not rounded here. A lot of people want to get in this position and pull from this position. That's a position of weakness. If you have a rounded back, it's going to really create a lot of shearing in the lumbar spine. Not necessarily good. Bad idea. So double overhand grip. Think about driving through your heels and scraping your shins, pulling the bar directly up over the shins, over the knees, to the mid-thigh, extending the hips, driving your hips forward. And you're going to reverse it on the way down. So my head's here, positioned properly. My hips are slightly higher than my knees. I'm driving through my heels, trying to push my heels through the ground. Strong grip. I want to clear my knees and push my hips forward at the top. Hips back. Nice gaze here with my eyes. Nice flat cervical spine. Strong grip. Drive and push the hips forward at the top. So you're looking straight ahead at the top. And when I go down, I'm going to reverse that. So the conventional deadlift is really going to work your glutes and your hamstrings, but it's also going to put a lot more stress on your paraspinal muscles, so your low back musculature. And I'm going to demonstrate the sumo style deadlift here in a minute. I would consider a lot more hamstring glute dominant, not so much the lower back. So we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. I'm not a big fan of doing a conventional deadlift, say maybe once every 7 to 10 days, because it really stresses your nervous system. Again, a lot of stress on your whole body, your entire body, so from head to toe. So conventional deadlifts, if you're doing, say, 3 to 5 sets of, sets of 2 and 3 reps which are near maximal loads, it's a lot of stress on your body, especially for, people that are over 40. So young guys, 18, young girls, 18, 19, 20, 21 can get away with it maybe a little bit more frequently, but you've got to be careful. So that's how you perform the conventional deadlift. So now we're going to talk about the sumo deadlift. The sumo deadlift, your feet are going to, this is a wide position. So let's look at the position, foot position. So feet angled out like so. Depending on how much motion you have in your hips is going to dictate where you're going to position your feet. So for each person, it really is going to be different. If you have especially tight adductor muscles, if your groin's especially tight, this may be difficult for you to get in this position, to get down and to get into the proper position and get your hips back. If you don't have as much motion in your hips and you feel more comfortable with a slightly narrower stance, you can do that. But you want to make sure that you angle your feet out and the position of your knees is the same as your toes. So you're not going to point your feet straight ahead when you're doing this. You're here, like so. So you can drive your groin, drive your knees out to kind of open up your hips. That's going to stretch your adductors, lengthen your hamstrings more, and address your glutes more. So this is a comfortable position for me to get in. My grip, typically, I'm going to let my hands fall where they may, straight down from my shoulders. I'm not going to go necessarily wider or narrower, but my position of strength is where they are now. So that's where I'm going to grab the bar when I go down. Same idea in terms of the barbell should be over the midfoot. You want to think about getting your groin over the bar. Stand right on top of the bar. Get your groin over the bar. Feet here. Drive those knees out. Drive the hips back. Push the knees out as you lift your hips. As you start to extend your hips, push your hips forward at the top. Butt back. So when I do this, I feel this a lot more through my groin. Let's turn it to the side here. A lot more through my hamstrings and my glutes. So feet position, angled out. My hands are going to drop down where they are right now and grab the bar, double overhand grip. Same idea. Drive the hips back. My gaze is about 6 to 8 feet in front of me. You can see that my hips are slightly higher than my knees. I'm going to drive through my heels as I pull the bar up my shins and drive my hips forward at the top. And reverse that. Drive the butt back. Get your groin over the bar in the down position. Really important, you get your shoulder blades over the top of the bar. If you buy this Starting Strength Basic Barbell Training book, they really talk about the position of your shoulders over the bar. That's going to help with the pull pattern where you have a nice vertical pull. So nice vertical pull, very important in terms of utilizing your entire body strength-wise and decreasing the likelihood of an injury. Most people get injured on a deadlift because they use improper form or they weren't screened properly before performing the deadlift. They've got some type of an underlying issue, say with a disc in their lower back or an issue with their hip, or it's usually just a faulty body position and they can't maintain body alignment, proper mechanics through the entire exercise. So common movement flaws that I see rounding of the upper back, collapsing of the knees, lifting their hips too rapidly where they're doing, say, a conventional deadlift, and they're in this position and they lift their hips here and pull from this position. It's more like a Romanian deadlift or a stiff-legged deadlift variation. It's kind of a funky way. But too many people, when they get too heavy on the weights, they tend to round their upper back. And that's a problem. I've watched a lot of CrossFit classes because there's so many people that attend some of these classes. And this is not always the way it happens because there are a lot of very good CrossFit instructors that are very anal in their approach and not allowing people to deviate from proper biomechanics. But there are also those individuals that are in classes where the instructors cannot watch everyone and cannot give that individual a verbal cue to say, hey, mechanically you're kind of messed up. So don't allow your knees to collapse. Don't allow the bar to come too far out in front of you. That horizontal bar position, if the bar is too far out in front of you, creates way more shearing on the lower back. So that's why it's really important that you want the bar to move vertically. So those are several tips on 2 different variations, conventional and sumo style deadlift. I could talk about that all day and little tweaks and things that you could do mechanically. But we're going to move on to the trap bar deadlift. Trap bar deadlift. To teach somebody how to do this, it's pretty simple, pretty quick. If you have one of these in your gym, if you're a high school student and you use one of these in your strength and conditioning class, it's a nice way to quickly learn how to perform a deadlift. The injury rate is probably much lower on this because it's easier to train, but there are still some movement flaws that people get themselves into. So you're going to step inside the trap bar like so, and you've got your handles that are elevated, but I'm going to show you a way to make this harder where it's lower to the ground by just flipping the bar on the other side. But same idea in terms of head position, foot position. You want to make sure that you grab the trap bar right in the middle. For example, right in the middle of the knurling here. Don't get one hand, your hands out in front or too far back, but you want to eyeball it. Typically, I see this axis right here, and I want to make sure that my shin is essentially in alignment with these 2 points, okay? My feet are pointing straight ahead. You really can't do this sumo style. Hip back, pretty easy because you're not going down so far. The other thing that you want to be sure of, whether you're doing a trap bar deadlift, a sumo style deadlift, or a conventional deadlift, is not allowing your hips to translate to the right or to the left. Hip translation, let's see if I can show it to you from behind here. It's done like so. When you go down and you lift the bar, whether you're doing a squat or a deadlift, and you start to pull and your hips shift to the right like they are right now. A lot of strain on the lower back. Uneven loading patterns. That means that my right leg was doing most of the work, not my left leg. So you're going to create muscle imbalances by doing that. So you want to make sure that the pelvis remains square regardless of the deadlift you're performing. If you don't do that, again, you're going to develop muscle imbalances and probably increase a risk of injury to the lower back. So make sure you're aware of that. So again, very simple on the trap bar deadlift, hips back, stand up. All right, if you want to turn this around, if you notice, I can get this lower to the ground by simply flipping this on the other side. It's pretty easy to pull from an elevated position. You can use a lot more weight using a trap bar, most people, especially novices, than they can, say, performing a conventional or sumo barbell deadlift. But by just turning this down, now I'm lower to the ground. Same idea in terms of spine angle. For example, using a regular barbell, I want to drive those hips back, not round my back like so. Drive the hips back, keep those shoulders retracted. You want to think about being strong in the upper back, driving your chest forward, pushing those hips forward, firing the glutes at the top. So those are the main points I want to make on the trap bar deadlift. Let's get this out of the way. Okay, let's say you have a weakness. Or you're weak in your hamstrings, or you can't maintain a position in your upper back or your lower back in terms of a position of your shoulders. What are some of the things that you can do to help improve strength in those areas? I like a lot of different, countless things, but I'm going to give you a couple of things that I like in terms of working on the spinal extensors, my glutes and hamstrings, which really contribute to increasing your strength in a pulling exercise like a deadlift or a lift like a squat. This is called a banded Romanian deadlift. So you're going to take the band here and you're going to step on it. This is a super band, different strengths out there. You can probably go up to several hundred pounds. This is probably about 75 to 100. But I'm going to place my feet here, about the same position as I would if I'm doing a conventional deadlift. And I'm going to pull the band over my upper neck like so. And I'm going to stand up. And I'm going to drive my hips back, go into trunk flexion. I'm going to get a big lengthening effect in my hamstrings. My glutes are going to really activate, especially at the top. They're going to fire really hard. And my spinal erectors, my paraspinal muscles here, and my lumbar spine, lower back, are going to really work too. So this forces you also to keep your shoulders back, to strengthen your middle traps, your upper back. When you go down, you just hold on here, flex your spine forward, and stand up, really driving those heels through the ground. So this is a great accessory exercise that you can do, say 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps, using a band that you can handle for that, that many reps. You can increase the tension by using a thicker band. They're all color-coded and they're different bands. Different manufacturers have different strengths. But that kind of gives you an idea of an exercise that you can do to strengthen the glutes, strengthen the hamstrings, and the paraspinal muscles. Okay? Before I forget, let me just touch on weightlifting belts. I love weightlifting belts when they're used properly. A proper weightlifting belt for really, I only like to use a weightlifting belt for like a couple of different lifts, but any type of a pulling exercise off the floor, say if you're doing a deadlift or cleans or snatches, clean and jerks, you can use a belt if you're going to do, say, submax reps. If I'm going to do a set of, say, 10 or 8 repetitions on a particular movement like I just mentioned, then I'm not going to use a belt. But if I'm going to do, say, 5 reps or fewer, then I want that better, greater intra-abdominal pressure here in my abdominal region, then I'm going to use a belt. And I'm going to cinch the belt up, not so tight that I can't breathe, but tight enough that you can get a finger in here, that when you push your belly out, it's going to create more pressure. And people oftentimes don't know how to use a belt, or why should I use a belt? Well, the belt is going to help give you more intra-abdominal pressure and create more stability in the lumbar spine. All right? And if you can't push your gut against the belt, then you're not going to really create that intra-abdominal pressure. It's the intra-abdominal pressure that you're looking for. It's not necessarily the belt, but the belt provides something that you can push your belly against. That's going to give you more stability in your lower back. So a belt's great. I like these belts from Elite FTS. They're decent belts. A lot of different belt manufacturers out there. You've got to find one that fits your body. The big giant backs that some of them make, they're really thick here, I think are stupid. But you want something anywhere between, most people anywhere between about 4 to 6 inches, that range. And that's my tidbit on belts. The other thing that I think that where people are weak at, where their hips don't work properly because their feet collapse when they're doing a deadlift, and their knees collapse, is weak hips. So their lateral hip rotators, their external hip rotators are weak. So I like doing this banded monster walk. Bands are probably better than the loop tubing because they provide more resistance. So again, you can get different bands, but just doing a monster walk where you're going side to side, say for a set amount of time or for a set number of reps, really going to work your glutes. And I'm not bringing my feet too close together because I want those tiny muscles, those lateral hip rotators, to work. So I can't overload them. If you use too much resistance, these muscles are going to turn off and not work as well as they should. So use an appropriate resistance, band, so that you get good range of motion. You don't have limited range of motion. I'm not talking about stepping as far as you can, but you're going to step out about a foot, foot and a half, and keep that tension on that band so those hips work properly. So just hold on, drive those shoulders back, head straight ahead. So I'll do the same maybe for a minute, 45 seconds, something like that, or anywhere 12 to 15 reps. And I just take my time when I do it. The other thing I don't like to see people do is really use body English and do this crap. You want to make sure you keep your shoulders square, your hips square, pretty motionless everywhere, and by all means, fire the hell out of your abs. Your abs need to be engaged, turned on, and contracted hard. That will give you better stability in your lumbar spine and really force those hip rotators to do their job. So that banded monster walk, pretty sweet. The other thing, hip extension type exercises. This is the glute root. This is our design, and it's pretty cool. So it allows us to do barbell hip thrusters or banded hip thrusters. I'm going to show you how to do a banded hip thruster because it's easy, but you can do a hip thruster, say, off of a bench. If you want, if you can load it up where you have resistance. We've got a deck on here that allows us to put our ankle joint into dorsiflexion, so it drives our glute and our hamstring more. But you're going to take the band here, and you can also rig this up on a power rack too. It's a little bit harder, or some really, really heavy weights, where you'll put the band around the weights and get yourself underneath. So hopefully I won't crush my mic. So I'm going to place my feet on the platform, get my upper back up here, and I'm going to drive my feet are about hip width, and I'm going to drive my hips straight up. I'm going to drop my hips down, so I'm going to really drive those hips up, make my glutes fire, make my hamstrings fire like crazy. So I'm still getting that low back activation, but mainly my glutes and my hamstrings are really firing hard. So that's a banded hip thruster, okay? And this is the glute root, and this allows us to do that exercise, safely and with really, really good training effects in terms of strength development. You can also do, say, I talked about hip thrusters. You can do a hip thruster, say off a bench, or I'm just going to show you on the glute root where you have one leg on the ground, one knee extended. You're really trying to extend those hips. That means drive those hips straight up. Focus on feeling your hamstring and your glute activate, fire hard. Drop the hips down and then up, down and then up. So that hip extension, that hip drive, trying to really activate those gluteal muscles. And most people have very weak glutes. Their glutes don't want to work. As you've gotten older, I don't know if you've noticed your derriere is not what it once was. And those muscles atrophy. They're big muscles and they need to be stimulated. So if you do hip extension type exercises like I just demonstrated, that's going to turn those muscles on, turn those glutes on, turn those hamstrings on, those powerful hip extension muscles, which is going to aid you in pulling exercises like doing any type of a deadlift that I just demonstrated, any type of an exercise or any type of a movement that you do around the house. Again, gardening, picking up kids, hauling things, loading things, pushing things. The glutes come into play big time. If you ever pushed a car because you had a stalled car, I guarantee you your glutes and your hamstrings were working like crazy. Well, if you want to continue pushing that car for the rest of your life, then you got to work those glutes and hamstrings properly. So that's the banded hip extension. Okay, the last exercise I'm going to demonstrate here for the hamstrings is a barbell Romanian deadlift. Great exercise for the glutes. I demonstrated how to do a banded RDL. So the conventional barbell Romanian deadlift is you have to use a barbell. You can also use dumbbells too, but I like using a barbell a little bit more than a dumbbell because it simulates part of the movement of, the either sumo or conventional style deadlift. So same idea when you set up for this. Your feet are directly beneath the bar. The bar's over the midfoot. You're going to use a double overhand grip. I just let my hands fall where they are in relationship to my shoulders, just straight down. So I like to start in the top position. So I'm going to deadlift the bar, drive my hips back, lower the bar down. So I'm not really unhinging my hips. I'm flexing my spine, my hip joint, and then I'm going to drive my hips forward. So I am hinging at the hips. It's just a little bit different in terms of the degree of knee flexion that you would use. So drive the butt back, drive the hips forward. So as I go down, I get a big lengthening effect in the upper hamstrings. And as I drive my hips forward, my glutes fully activate and turn on. So I would suggest anywhere, approximately 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps. So use a load that you can handle, that you maintain that good spine angle. And when you go down, that you're not rounding your upper back and collapsing here because you're too weak here. So lighten the load to allow you to keep your shoulders and spine in a proper position to better activate your hamstrings and your glutes. So a lot of information today. But if you have questions about what we do here at Body Symmetry, definitely give us a call. If you have questions about exercise in general, go check out our cool website, freefitnessvideos.com, entirely free. We've got tons of free workouts on there that you can check out. Over 700 exercises that you can check out where you can filter by, if you just have a Swiss ball and say exercise to me, you can throw that into the filter and it will pull up hundreds. So check that out for sure. Thanks again for joining me on another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Marshak. Hey, Quinn and Riley. 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 Hey, Quinn.